Hello, church family. Welcome to today's Sunday school lesson. We are now taking a break from our study in the minor prophets, and now we are going to be looking at our Rise Up sermon series and Sunday school series that we'll have, and we will be looking at for the next 6 weeks. This first lesson is called Rise Up and Remember God's Faithfulness. You can find it if you have your booklet on page 24, right after the week 1 sermon notes. The Sunday school notes actually happen after the sermon notes every week. And we are just going to talk about it, talk about Nehemiah, who he is, what he does, what his mission in life was, what God gave him to tell the people of Israel. I'm sorry, I'm having some lighting issues that I'm just trying to solve very quickly. And so we're going to look at this. I am going to do my best to, at least in this first lesson, to give some context for the book of Nehemiah. Because the way that the lesson material is, it is very much meant for a group. So I'm going to do my best to make this accessible to those who are at home and to Sunday school teachers who watch this before Sunday morning so that they can get a little bit of extra preparation in for their lessons. So it won't be exactly like it would be if you were in a Sunday school small group on Sunday morning, because it's me talking to a camera and you listening and reading along with me. And so these questions are much more discussion based. They're less here's the answer and there's a correct, or here's the question and there's a correct answer to it, and more, how do you feel about this? What comes to mind? And those kinds of questions. And so I will ask those, and I will give you, and you can pause the video when I do and talk about it with your family at home, or have a few moments to write it down yourself in your own booklet. But for the most part, my goal is to provide some contextual information, provide some just information about who Nehemiah was, what his goal was, what was happening in the world around him, and giving a commentary really on what was going on. So I have a few materials. If you see me sorting around, I'm looking between a Bible and a couple of other resources, as well as our Rise Up booklet. But without further ado, let us look together at Nehemiah chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. I'm reading from the CSB, the Christian Standard Bible. Let me know in the comments if that's okay. That's what our Explore the Bible series is in, and that's my personal study Bible is in the CSB. I have other Bibles here around though, and I can use those translations. So if you're okay with the CSB, let me know. If not, I can use a different translation, and that wouldn't be a problem. But anyway, let's look at Nehemiah chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. The words of Nehemiah, son of Haliah, during the month of Chislev in the 20th year, when I was in the fortress city of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, arrived with men from Judah, and I questioned them about Jerusalem and the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile. They said to me, "The remnant in the province who survived the exile are in great trouble and disgrace. Jerusalem's wall has been broken down and its gates have been burned." So we get this report that something has happened to Jerusalem. Somebody has gone in and broken down the wall and has burned the gates. So we need to understand, though, what this 20th year is. It says there in verse 1, during the month of Chislev in the 20th year, when I was in the fortress city of Susa. Well, 20th year of what? Well, if we look back into Ezra and Nehemiah actually overlap with one another. They are both men, leaders that are brought up by the Lord in Persia, because at this point in time, Israel is under Persian rule, under King Cyrus. And this is the 20th year of King Cyrus. Cyrus the... I don't know if it's Cyrus the Great. It just says King Cyrus and all the stuff that I'm reading. So King Cyrus is in charge, and I'm dropping stuff off my desk. Anyway, we have this Persian Empire. Well, the last time we looked at anything, we saw Babylonians, and before them it was Assyrians. So we're going to talk about a little bit about what was going on. So Nehemiah is the last book that really gives us a history of what's happening in Israel and Judah before the New Testament takes place. Now you'll notice that it's kind of in the middle of the New Testament. It's before Psalms and Proverbs. It's not in and amongst the minor prophets. Well, that's because the minor prophets kind of occur during and around the same time as the histories, the First and Second Kings, First and Second Samuel, First and Second Kings, and First and Second Chronicles. Then Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther happen, and then we get into Job, and we get into other history books. But Nehemiah is the final glimpse of God's gathered people. So this is before what we know as the diaspora. So this is before, this is the last chance that we get to look at Israel before they are completely tossed to the wind and conquered by every other nation, and very few Jews are actually living in Jerusalem. And we get this very pitiful report here at the beginning. We get this report that there is an attack on Jerusalem. Somebody's broken down the walls and burnt down the gates. Well, it talks about this remnant. Well, the remnant that's there were actually exiled Israelites who were allowed to go back to Jerusalem by King Cyrus. So just a little bit of context here. When we talk about the different countries and nations who came in and took over Israel, there are three main ones that happened right before this. So we know of Israel's enslavement in Egypt years and years and years and years and years in the past at this point. But during this, we saw the fall of the northern kingdom of Israel to the Assyrian Empire. They conquered and dispersed the northern kingdom of Israel in 722 BC. But then the Assyrian Empire fell to the Babylonians. And we know one of the most famous names in the Bible is Nebuchadnezzar. That is the king of Babylon. That was the king of Babylon when Daniel and his friends Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were part of the exile into Babylon. That was King Nebuchadnezzar. They took over in 586 BC, so just about 140 years or so. I think it's really like 136 years after the Assyrians had taken over. The Babylonians actually took over the Assyrian Empire, and so because of that, they ended up with the Israelite kingdom and the people. And so that's what we know as the Babylonian captivity. That's, again, the time of King Nebuchadnezzar. But then in just a short, I think it's 47 years, in a short 47 years, the Medes and the Persians, took over the Babylonian Empire. So there wasn't much time in between as far as big scale goes, about 50 years, that the Babylonians had Israel and had a big empire, and now it falls to the Persians. And that is where we see the beginning of the Persian Empire with the reign of King Cyrus. And we see in the Bible that Cyrus was one that God used mightily. He didn't know God, but God used him as one who he directed and equipped. And we can go and look at Isaiah chapter 45, verses 1 through 6. So if you'll turn to Isaiah chapter 45, get there, verses 1 through 6. Let's read that together. The Lord says this to Cyrus, his anointed. So this is talking to King Cyrus, whose right hand I have grasped to subdue nations before him and disarm kings and open doors before him, and even city gates will not be shut. I will go before you and level uneven places. I will shatter the bronze doors and cut the iron bars in two. I will give you the treasures of darkness and the riches from secret places, so that you may know that I am the Lord. I am the God of Israel, who calls you by your name. I call you by your name for the sake of my servant Jacob and Israel, my chosen one. I give a name to you, though you do not know me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. There is no God but me. I will strengthen you, though you do not know me, so that all may know from the rising of the sun to its setting that there is no one but me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. So God uses Cyrus to send Israelites back into Jerusalem. Cyrus doesn't know the Lord. Cyrus isn't a believer. Cyrus isn't a Jew. Cyrus isn't one of God's chosen people, but he is still called out by God. And we see there in Isaiah that God really did have favor for Cyrus, other than the fact that Cyrus didn't know him, and it was really a use case kind of thing. God used Cyrus. The things he did, he gave him victory, not for Cyrus's sake though, but for the people of Israel. God used Cyrus for his own glory and for the good of his people. And so what this whole purpose of this session in the Rise Up series is to look at God's promises and how they're going to be answered, even in the midst of calamity and destruction. So Cyrus equips equips and calls 3 people to take Israelites from the Persian Empire back into Jerusalem. And these 3 people are, if I can find the first one, Zerubbabel, who is a descendant of David, Ezra, who is the author of the book beforehand, and Nehemiah. So the first wave of Jewish exiles returned, led by Zerubbabel, and we can read that account in Ezra chapters 1 through 6. And then 70 years later, so a long time later, another mission to Jerusalem was led by Ezra. And then the third actually happens soon after, and it's described in Nehemiah's book, and Nehemiah is the one who leads it. And if I look over here, I have how much time happens between the two. I wanted to say it's about 13 years. I don't know. Anyway, there's a second or a third expedition to Jerusalem, a third wave of exiles returning to Jerusalem, led by Nehemiah, and described in his book. And we will see Ezra in this as we go through the book of Nehemiah. We will probably see Ezra because they, like I said, they do overlap. But the point of the book of Nehemiah is to show that God's word stands firm. That is what the goal is. That is what Nehemiah strives to tell us, is how God is faithful. First of all, there is a remnant in Israel, a faithful remnant to the Lord in Israel that has been allowed back in. And the fact that happens is a great mercy and a fulfillment of God's promises. Isaiah and Jeremiah both prophesied that this would happen, that there would be a remnant left in Israel that would survive the exile and return to the land. Then we also see that God's covenant love to his people shows itself not just in their survival, but also in his continuing provision of godly leaders who make clear the path of faith. In this Rise Up series, we're going to see how Nehemiah urges the people and leads the people to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem in 52 days. And so God uses faithful leaders, provides faithful leaders to make a clear path of faith, and through Zerubbabel, God fulfills his promise that there will be a Davidic line in charge of Jerusalem. Zerubbabel was not a king of Israel, but he was a leader in Israel and was a descendant of David, and represents the sure promise of an eternal king who we know to be Jesus. So, like I've said, Nehemiah's task is to bring God's people together at this point in history not just to rebuild the wall, but also to rebuild the people of Israel. So let us look together now at our booklet, and we're going to read verses 1 through 3 again, and we're going to look at how God's promises, even in the midst of destruction, are still true. So let's read together again. I'm going to start after the son of Haliah in chapter 1. During the month of Chislev in the 20th year, when I was in the fortress city of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, arrived with men from Judah, and I questioned them about Jerusalem and the Jewish remnant that survived the exile. They said to me, the remnant in the province who survived the exile are in great trouble and disgrace. Jerusalem's wall has been broken down, and its gates have been burned. So, if you were to read this, but you know the statement, God can be trusted, well, we've seen that God can be trusted because God had promised that there would be a remnant left. That's what Isaiah and Jeremiah prophesied. God is making good on that promise by sending people into Jerusalem and back into the Holy Land. But now we get this bad report. So when we hear God can be trusted, even in the midst of bad circumstances, what comes to mind? What emotions does that call forth, that God can be trusted? Do you believe that? Do you believe that he can be, even in the midst of the worst news you've ever gotten? What personal experiences or stories does this statement bring to mind? And do you ever have a but in that? Meaning, God can be trusted, but. And if you do, I want you to identify what that but statement is. God can be trusted, but I don't know how to right now. God can be trusted, but my circumstances are rough. God can be trusted, but I don't know how to right now. So I want you to think about those things. I want you to think about what is keeping you from just fully devoting yourself to the promises that God has for you and following and trusting in him. I want you to think about a time in your life when you received unfortunate and unexpected news, like Nehemiah did here. He asked the question, tell me about the people in Jerusalem. And so they did, and they said that they are suffering disgrace and trouble because the walls are broken. How do you respond? How do we respond in these kinds of situations? Do we jump to the idea that that God is with us even through it, or do we start saying, woe is me? Do we start going into the worst case scenarios and start getting mad at God because of things not going our way right away? When you get that unexpected news, where is God? In your own words, think about that and see where God is, even in the midst of these bad situations and this bad news that you've gotten. So the Rise Up Initiative isn't just another series that our church is working through. While all of our series that we go through, the Explore the Bible series, our Wednesday night series that Brother Richard teaches, our Sunday night series that he teaches right now in Deuteronomy, but specifically Sunday school series, while they're all extremely important, what's unique about Rise Up is the opportunity to take our commitment to Jesus to the next level, to a level that we've probably never experienced. Our belief in God's faithfulness will be called forth like never before. Our prayer life, family discussions, and personal devotion time could possibly reach a greater depth and richness than ever before. I read that just off of page 25. So there are some questions there, and I want you to take some time to fill this out. So I'm going to read these questions for you. You can read along, and then I want you to take time after this video is over and fill out those blanks and answer them for you. What excites you about the Rise Up Initiative? What concerns you? Well, I'll just give my answers briefly. I'm excited about the Rise Up Initiative because I've seen how faithful Emory Baptist Church is. I've been a part of every members meeting since I came to Emory Baptist Church in 2019, and I was blown away before I came to Emory Baptist Church because Brother Richard shared with me the generosity and the faithfulness of its members through financial statements. He kind of just gave me a brief financial history of the church. I was blown away by how faithful the church had been in 2018. He just shared some numbers with me, and I was coming from the church I was at, which was a very small church, a very poor church. And to hear about this generosity, I was like, okay, this is a church that's growing. This is a church that's willing to give to a mission, that's willing to do stewardship, financial stewardship biblically, and is going and above beyond the call of even just 10%, but they are really sending out money for missions and for projects in Texas and in North America and also abroad. And I was very excited about that. I'm really excited for this because I know that while we are a very faithful and giving church, and you all are very generous church members, that we can even step it up even more. And I'm excited to see how that goes. I'm the only concern I really have is what that looks like. I'm concerned about how we're going to work together as a church, as how unified we will be. I'm worried about how Satan will try to break our unity. So that's what I'm going to be praying for, is unity in our church and unity in our mission for this Rise Up series. As we begin this prayer, this is the second question, I'm sorry. As we begin this prayer journey for Rise Up, what are some struggles you expect to encounter? In addition to prayer, how can our classes surround you and help you bear your burdens? So I want you to think about that. You can see there are some possible answers to that. If you're in a Sunday school class this morning, don't be afraid to discuss these things with your Sunday school class members. These are people who love you, who care for you, who you see every week. Don't be afraid to share. Don't be afraid to share. For us, for me at least, the struggle that I expect to encounter is seeing results immediately. I am a millennial through and through. I love instant gratification, and so I will be giving money to this just like we all will. And for me, when I put money into something, if I invest in something, I want to see immediate results, and we won't see that. And so for me, I know that Satan is going to go, well, there's no need to give any money yet, even though I know that's wrong. I know that Satan is going to try to make it look like the money won't work out for Mine and Grace's financials. And I know that's not true. I know what our bank accounts, what our bank statements say, and I know what we can give and what we are going to give. So those are struggles that I expect to have. There might be others, and yours might be totally different than mine, and that's okay. Share them with your class. Pray together today about these. And then finally, number 3, embarking on a prayer journey and committing to having intentional conversations around specific topics can seem a bit overwhelming for those of us with full schedules and responsibilities. How might your group or class hold each other accountable on a regular basis to keep an open dialogue with God, with our families, and with each other during Rise Up? So I want you to just think about some ways that you can be accountable to your class members, be accountable to your family, and be accountable to your church family to help each other during Rise Up, to remain faithful to the Lord and keep an open mind about what He is going to do with Emory Baptist Church. So that has been week 1. Again, this first lesson is very, very short because we have a very short passage to go over. And so I just wanted to give you just a little bit of context about the book of Nehemiah and what was going on. And I will continue to try to do that through the coming weeks. I am studying this just like your Sunday school teachers are. I don't have a degree in Nehemiah by any means. And so I'm looking forward to going through this. I've never studied Nehemiah in depth before in any kind of fashion, and so I'm excited for what I can learn and share with you over the next 6 weeks. Thank you so much. I look forward to worshiping with you very soon. Bye bye.